Something extraordinary is happening at the 2026 World Cup, and it has almost nothing to do with luck. Fans expected fireworks on the field. Nobody expected the tournament itself to become a political battlefield before a single ball in the knockout rounds was even kicked. Germany, a four-time champion, is gone. The Netherlands, a nation stacked with world-class talent, is gone too. And behind every one of these stunning results sits a bigger story about money, visas, borders, and a president who wanted this tournament to be his personal victory lap. Let's start with the shock that nobody in the football world saw coming. Germany, one of the most decorated national teams on the planet, was eliminated in the round of 32 by Paraguay, a team that almost nobody outside South America expected to survive the group stage. Paraguay played without fear from the very first whistle. Every tackle, every counterattack carried the belief that history could be made. Germany clawed their way back into the match and thought they had completed a miracle comeback when the ball crossed the line. German fans erupted, players embraced on the sideline, already celebrating a spot in the next round. Then the video review system intervened. After a long, tense check, the goal was disallowed. The stadium fell into stunned silence. Extra time solved nothing, and the match went to penalties. Germany missed their first attempt, then missed again, and within minutes, the four-time champions were trudging back to the locker room in disbelief, while Paraguay celebrated one of the greatest nights in their football history. Reports out of Germany now suggest the federation is already lining up a coaching change, with head coach Julian Nagelsmann reportedly under serious pressure, and Jurgen Klopp's name circulating as a possible replacement, according to multiple outlets covering the German Federation's internal discussions. Nothing has been confirmed publicly by German football officials, so for now, this remains speculation. But the fact that this conversation is even happening within days of the elimination shows just how seismic this loss really was. If anyone still doubted that Morocco's stunning run to the semifinals back in 2022 was more than just a lucky streak, this tournament put that argument to rest for good. The Atlas Lions did it again, this time eliminating the Netherlands in a match that stayed locked in tension from start to finish. Neither side wanted to be the one that made the fatal mistake. After extra time failed to break the deadlock, penalties decided everything, and once more Morocco showed remarkable composure under pressure. Every kick, every save, every celebration told the story of a football nation that refuses to be defined by past disappointments. The Dutch are heading home. Morocco is marching forward into a matchup nobody could have predicted before the tournament began. Morocco against Canada, one of the host nations, in the round of 16. Whichever side wins writes a new page in their football history. And for Canada, simply reaching this stage as co-hosts already represents a landmark achievement for a program that spent decades outside the sport's global conversation. Brazil nearly became the next giant to fall. Japan delivered one of the bravest, most disciplined performances of the entire tournament, pressing relentlessly and frustrating Brazil's five-time champions for long stretches of the match. Every passing minute seemed to raise the stakes higher, and millions of Brazilian fans around the world feared another gut-wrenching World Cup exit. Then, deep into stoppage time, the breakthrough arrived. A goal settled the match. The stadium erupted, and Brazil survived to fight another day. But surviving is not the same as dominating. And if Brazil continues defending the way it did against Japan, its next opponent could make the team pay an even steeper price, particularly if Norway advances through their side of the bracket. Picture that potential matchup. Two of the most electric young attackers in the sport going head-to-head with a quarterfinal spot on the line. That is exactly the kind of must-watch football this tournament is now setting up. Now look at what's waiting just around the corner. Canada faces Morocco in a battle between two nations, writing brand new chapters in their football stories. Paraguay could end up facing France next, which would mean Kylian Mbappe's squad has to get past the very team that just knocked out Germany. Brazil is waiting to see whether Norway or Ivory Coast comes through on the other side. And if it's Norway, fans everywhere finally get the showdown between two of the sport's brightest young stars. Portugal could meet Spain, setting up a meeting between Cristiano Ronaldo, who has said this will likely be his final World Cup, and a teenage phenomenon many believe represents football's next era. That is not just a football match. That is one generation of greatness handing the torch to the next. Argentina's road also remains fascinating to watch. Lionel Messi continues chasing one more historic World Cup run. And on paper, his team's path looks a little smoother than some of the other favorites. But World Cups have taught us this lesson time and again. There are no easy matches once the knockout stage begins. Every underdog believes, every favorite feels the weight of expectation. And sometimes, one single moment changes the entire trajectory of a tournament. France, meanwhile, remains arguably the most complete squad left in the competition. Mbappe has barely hit peak form so far, and if he starts producing his very best football, stopping France could become close to impossible for anyone left in the field. But here's the thing, almost nobody outside the football world is talking about enough. This tournament is unfolding inside one of the most politically charged environments any World Cup has ever seen. And it starts at the very top with FIFA President Gianni Infantino and his unusually close relationship with President Trump. During the official World Cup draw earlier this year, Infantino presented Trump with a specially created award called the FIFA Peace Prize, a gesture widely seen as a kind of consolation gift after Trump failed to win the actual Nobel Peace Prize, which he had reportedly believed he deserved. Infantino was later photographed sitting on stage wearing a red Make America Great Again cap during the launch of Trump's so-called Board of Peace. FIFA's own governing statutes call for strict political neutrality, yet critics across the football world argue that Infantino has increasingly blurred that line, tying international football's biggest stage directly to the political interests of the host nation's leader. That closeness matters because of what has happened around the tournament itself. Visa policy has become one of the most contentious issues of this entire World Cup. Fans from Iran and Haiti face a complete entry ban, meaning only players and official team staff are permitted to travel to the United States, while ordinary supporters from those countries have no path to attend matches involving their own national teams. Fans from Senegal and Ivory Coast have run into similarly steep barriers, with tourist visas largely suspended, officially because of concerns about past overstays from travelers originating in those countries. At one point, the American government even introduced a refundable deposit as high as $15,000 for visitors from certain nations, a sum meant to be returned only after the visitor actually left the country. That policy was quietly lifted for many ticket holders just weeks before the opening match, but its brief existence revealed just how deeply immigration enforcement and national security politics have shaped the fan experience at this tournament. Human rights organizations have gone further, warning of what they call a chilling effect, where fans from migrant communities are choosing to skip the trip entirely out of fear of encountering immigration agents near stadiums, especially given that American officials have publicly declined to rule out enforcement actions in and around World Cup venues. Then there's the price of actually watching this tournament in person, which has turned into its own controversy. FIFA introduced dynamic pricing for the first time in World Cup history, meaning ticket costs shift in real time based on demand. So two fans buying seats in the same section during the same sales window can end up paying wildly different amounts. Premium seats for the final were initially listed at around $11,000, and by late May, the cheapest available ticket for the championship match on FIFA's own website had climbed to $8,625. Wheelchair-accessible seating for the final cost at least $10,350, and the very last available seat in the front row right beside the corner flag was listed at an almost unbelievable $690,000. Fan advocacy groups and consumer protection organizations have accused FIFA of inflated, non-transparent pricing. with some supporters reporting they purchased one seating category and were later assigned significantly worse seats than advertised. The situation escalated enough that attorneys general in both New Jersey and New York have opened formal investigations into FIFA's ticketing practices, and consumer groups have filed a separate complaint with European Union regulators. On top of official sales, FIFA also operates its own resale marketplace, reportedly collecting a 30% cut on every resold ticket, a detail that has only intensified accusations that financial interests, not fan access, are driving decisions at the top of the organization. The tournament's expanded format has drawn its own share of scrutiny, too. This is the first World Cup to feature 48 teams instead of the previous 32, pushing the total number of matches from 64 all the way up to 104. Critics argue the expansion dilutes the overall quality of competition by allowing more lower-ranked teams into the field, even as it simultaneously made qualification easier by advancing not just the top 2 teams from each of 12 groups, but also the 8 best third-place finishers, because 32 teams now emerge from the group stage instead of 16. This tournament marks the very first time a round of 16 has existed in this exact format, adding an extra layer of matches, extra travel, and extra costs for everyone involved, players and fans alike. Some football analysts and governance experts see something more calculated behind the expansion, suggesting that smaller football confederations, whose votes carry significant weight inside FIFA's internal power structure, stand to benefit most from the additional slots. That has led to persistent, though unproven, speculation that Infantino pushed for this expansion less out of sporting necessity and more as a way to secure political support and shore up his own position of power within the global federation. FIFA has not confirmed any such motive, and it remains firmly in the category of informed speculation rather than established fact. Environmental groups have raised alarms as well. Independent studies estimate the tournament could generate more than 9 million tons of carbon dioxide, driven largely by the enormous distances between host cities spread across 3 countries and the sheer volume of flights required to move teams, staff, and fans between them. That figure is comparable to the total annual carbon output of an entire mid-sized island nation with more than 1 million residents and several million annual tourists. Environmental organizations have already started referring to this as potentially the most climate-damaging World Cup ever staged. The problems don't stop at emissions either. Many stadiums sit far outside city centers with limited public transportation access, and where transit options exist, prices spiked dramatically ahead of the tournament, with a short train ride to one major New Jersey stadium briefly costing as much as $150 compared to a normal fare of around $13. After loud public backlash, organizers relented and introduced a flat transportation rate of $98, while shuttle bus fares were cut from $80 down to $20. Drivers haven't escaped the price surge either, with parking running anywhere from $75 to $300 per match at many venues, and Boston standing out as the only host city lacking any more affordable public alternative to expensive on-site parking. And then there's the geopolitical backdrop that makes this tournament genuinely unprecedented. The United States, the primary host nation, has been engaged in active military tension with Iran, one of the participating countries, marking the first time in World Cup history that the host nation has found itself in a direct conflict with a team competing in its own tournament. Reports indicate that talks between American and Iranian officials in Switzerland collapsed at one point during the lead-up to the tournament, even as the United States moved to lift a naval blockade of the Persian Gulf following an electronically signed memorandum of understanding between the two governments. Iran's supreme leader has reportedly characterized any American concessions as moves made out of desperation rather than good faith, according to statements attributed to Iranian state media, though these characterizations remain contested and should be treated as one side's framing of a fluid, fast-moving diplomatic situation rather than settled fact. For a tournament built around the idea of global unity through sport, the optics of hosting a team from a nation still technically at odds with the host government adds a layer of tension that FIFA has largely tried to avoid addressing publicly. Back on the field, though, none of that seems to be slowing the football down, and if anything, the chaos of the round of 32 has only raised the stakes for what comes next. The biggest lesson this tournament has taught so far is brutally simple. History means nothing once the referee blows the opening whistle. Germany's 4 championships couldn't save them. The Netherlands' generational talent couldn't save them either. Every favorite is vulnerable, and every underdog believes. And that is precisely why this sport earns its nickname as the beautiful game. Reputations don't score goals. Only performances do. As the knockout rounds intensify, every remaining nation now understands exactly what's on the line. There are no second chances left. Lose once, and 4 years of preparation disappear in an instant. Win, and an entire country celebrates like never before. The pressure has never been higher. The political noise surrounding this tournament has never been louder. And somehow, the biggest storylines, both on the field and off it, may still be waiting to be written. There's also a broader storyline about who actually benefits financially from a tournament this size. And it circles right back to the relationship between FIFA and the Trump administration. Since taking office, the current administration has publicly framed the World Cup as a showcase moment for the United States, with the president appearing at official FIFA events and using the tournament's global spotlight for his own political messaging. Analysts covering the intersection of sports and politics have described this dynamic using the term sports washing, a phrase typically applied to authoritarian governments using major sporting events to improve their global image, though in this case it's being applied to a democratic government's use of the tournament for domestic political branding. Human rights organizations, including groups that monitor global sporting events, have specifically criticized FIFA for what they describe as prioritizing a warm relationship with the host nation's leadership over enforcing its own stated commitment to political neutrality and human rights standards. FIFA officials have pushed back on these characterizations, insisting that engaging with heads of state is a normal part of hosting a tournament of this scale, and that the organization remains committed to keeping football and politics separate wherever possible. Whether that argument holds up is very much a matter of ongoing public debate rather than settled consensus, and it's likely to remain a talking point long after the final whistle blows on this tournament. Meanwhile, on the pitch, the round of 16 matchups are starting to crystallize into some of the most anticipated fixtures in recent World Cup memory. Portugal's narrow, dramatic win over Croatia, secured by a late goal in the closing minutes, keeps Ronaldo's farewell tournament alive for at least one more round, and Portuguese fans are treating every match from here forward as a potential final bow for their captain. Spain looked utterly dominant in their own group stage finale, cruising past Austria by a 3-goal margin behind a standout performance from one of their forwards. And that kind of comfortable scoreline has quietly made Spain one of the tournament favorites heading into the knockout stage, even if they haven't received quite the same attention as Brazil, France, or Argentina. The United States men's national team, playing as co-hosts in front of home crowds, secured their own passage into the knockout rounds with a win over Bosnia and Herzegovina, despite being reduced to 10 men for a significant portion of the match after a red card. For American soccer, simply reaching the round of 16 on home soil represents a meaningful milestone, and the atmosphere inside U.S. venues has reportedly been electric every time the host nation takes the field. Elsewhere, Argentina's supporters have been making their presence felt in a very literal sense, with large traveling contingents of fans reportedly filling stadiums across Florida ahead of Argentina's matches, prompting the team's head coach to publicly credit the fans as something like a 12th player on the pitch. Norway's growing football profile has also become one of the quieter, feel-good stories of this tournament, with team merchandise reportedly selling out in stores back home, as excitement builds ahead of a potential meeting with Brazil, a matchup that would pit two of the most talked-about young attacking talents in the sport directly against each other on the biggest possible stage. On the other side of the bracket, Switzerland and Algeria are gearing up for their own last 32 clash, while Australia's coaching staff has expressed confidence about pulling off a historic result against Egypt, a fixture that has drawn relatively little global attention compared to the tournament's headline matchups, but carries enormous significance for both football federations involved. It's also worth noting how officiating itself has become a story within the story at this tournament. The same video review technology that overturned Germany's apparent equalizer against Paraguay has been at the center of several other contentious moments throughout the group stage and into the knockouts, reigniting a long-running debate within the sport about how much control instant replay should have over pivotal, emotional moments in a match. Some commentators covering the tournament have gone so far as to suggest that the video review system is becoming almost as influential on match outcomes as the players themselves, a claim that reflects growing frustration among fans who feel the flow and spontaneity of the sport is being disrupted by lengthy stoppages for review, even when those reviews ultimately produce the correct call. Whether that frustration leads to any formal changes in how the technology is used remains to be seen, but it's clearly part of the broader conversation surrounding this tournament, alongside ticket prices, visa policy, and the expanded format. Put all of that together, and what emerges is a World Cup unlike any other in the tournament's long history. A competition where the football itself has produced some of the most stunning upsets in decades, while simultaneously unfolding against a backdrop of visa restrictions, record-breaking ticket prices, environmental criticism, an unprecedented 48-team format, and a genuinely unusual level of entanglement between FIFA's leadership and the host nation's political leadership. None of that changes what happens on the field, where Paraguay, Morocco, Japan's near miss against Brazil, and every underdog run so far have proven that reputation and history mean absolutely nothing once the whistle blows. But it does mean that when people look back on this tournament years from now, they'll likely remember it for more than just who lifted the trophy. They'll remember it as the World Cup, where the politics surrounding the game became almost as unpredictable and almost as consequential as the football itself.